Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. I'm laughing. My family is upstairs making so much noise. I have no idea what they're doing.
They must be having fun.
They are having fun. It's all about ice cream right now.
Oh. What a night for ice cream.
No, it's that they can't have ice cream is what's causing
Oh, okay. I'm thinking more like hot chocolate.
Oh my gosh, it's so cold.
I can't believe how much the wind stayed going all day.
Yeah.
Did anybody lose power?
Our generator is still going. They're
Oh.
saying 10 o'clock.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Yeah, my parents have moved in today because they live down at East Lake.
bet you're glad they live close by now.
I am glad. It's nice to take care of them. Although they bought us dinner.
Perfect.
We had a little blip at the school, but came right back on, which was good.
Good.
And I bet the kids loved it.
Yeah, I didn't actually, I'm not sure it even, well, I'm not sure it phased them because I didn't hear first grade making any noise when it happened. They can be pretty loud.
Eric did. That was the first thing I heard about in the car, that it went on and off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Sydney, how was your drive home?
It was fine, but it was pretty windy on 89. I felt
So
a little bit
scary.
like maybe the car was like a sail, catching the wind.
Yeah.
We lost our metal shed about a week ago to it just imploded with snow. And then with this big gust of wind, I went out this morning and this massive metal plate blew out of it.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
That's
Wow.
kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, when I went out to get the paper this morning, we have some big white pines at the end of our driveway, and I was looking up to see if any branches looked like they were at risk.
All right, well, we have everybody back together and it looks like folks have some sort of lights on, at least enough to get us into the meeting tonight. So thank you, everybody. I will tell you, when the lights went off in the room where I am last night, my initial thought was, oh, I just haven't moved around in too long. Because normally when the lights go out during a board meeting, we're in the gym and it means we have, so I literally got up to move and then I was like, oh no, that doesn't.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to reconvene the Grantham School Board meeting from last night, and we'll reconvene at 6:32. And what we're going to do, and I'm going to just review our emergency meeting guidelines really quickly, and we will jump back into finishing the presentation of the NWEA data and that discussion. We'll finish that, and then we'll just move straight through the rest of the agenda. But I did want to open the meeting since we are reconvening. I'll go over the emergency guidelines, like I said, and then I will open a public comment period again. So we'll have that at the beginning of the meeting tonight, since I do see that we have some folks who are able to join us tonight from the public. And I was just looking to see if we had anybody right now by phone. It doesn't look like we have anybody calling in right now, but we'll keep an eye on that. So just as we start, so as the chair of the Grantham School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. And we are providing access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. So we're using Zoom for this electronic meeting. And the necessary information for dialing in or the link to join the meeting is available at www.gbshawks.org. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, and that is available at www.gbshawks.org. And we are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access, and they can call 603-863-9689. And similar, if the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. All of the votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And so we'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member will state their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So we'll start with the school board members and then we'll go to our administrators who are here with us. So Leslie.
I am here and there's no one in the room with me.
Denise. And Denise, it looks like you are still muted. We'll see if we can get Denise. Oh, okay, so Denise might rejoin us. Christine?
Christine Conroy, and there's no one else in the room.
Jody?
Jody Poljasic, and there's no one else in the room.
And I'm Brittany Pye, and there's no one else in the room. Sydney?
Sydney Leggett, no one else in the office, and hopefully the lights stay on.
Kristen?
Kristen Reed, and no one else is in the room.
All right, and Denise is back with us.
I'm back. Okay, what were we doing?
Just our roll call of that you are here and if there is anyone in the room with you.
Thank you. Denise Sullivan, and no one is in the room with me.
Excellent. Okay, so I will open up a brief public comment period for tonight. And if there are folks who are joining us in the meeting, you, as always, are welcome to provide comments in the chat, the Q&A, or if you would like to be brought in to speak, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. And as a reminder, if you would like your comments to be read or responded to or recorded, they do need to include your name and your address, just as we do for any of our meetings, so that we have a record of those folks who have spoken. So we'll give that a few minutes to see if we have any public participation tonight from folks who are joining us. And thank you to folks who are coming back to join us tonight. While we were waiting, Jody, I was thinking this is just the way of not letting you have a last meeting.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought too.
And that was my mind too. So I know you guys are talking about the lights going out and not being in the gym, but, and maybe Kristen, I don't know if you've been in there when the power goes out. It was kind of like, I don't know, like this major thing was like, blah, 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 blah. Like everything was shutting down. It was so loud.
I've never been in there when that happened. I was actually wondering whether you guys just thought it was the non-movement.
No, it was loud. Like you could tell things were like just shutting down and it got really dark.
The building was powering down.
Yeah.
Is there a generator at the school?
There is. It only functions in like the center of the building.
All right, so I'll just give another few seconds for if there are any comments to come in tonight. Okay, and we will resume our meeting with the, I think we were getting towards the end of the presentation of the NWEA data. But then I also want to have an opportunity for the board to be able to ask questions or to discuss that.
Right, so we condensed it a little bit just to give a brief overview of a little bit of last night and then to finish up. So I will just quickly share the screen and I will hand it right over to Kristen.
Okay. So we were at the end of the presentation when we had our power blip. So as Sydney said, we condensed it just to kind of do a quick overview and a reminder so that questions can be asked. So we're gonna move forward to the math data. It is weird that I can't drive it. So reviewing this slide, this is the winter 2021 average for each grade level compared to the NWA mean. And when you look at those scores or the average scores for each grade level, you'll see that in every grade in winter 2021 NEWA, the average mean was at or above the NWEA mean, which is a good thing, an exciting thing. So if we move on to the next slide, this is a slide that shows math growth from January of last year till January of this year, with that blue in the middle being the fall, the test that we usually don't take in the fall. And when you look at that, you will see in math that we have had good growth in that year's time. And then on the next slide, it is math growth over the last 4 years. And this is a slide we did not show you yesterday. It kind of sums up the information, some of the information that was in the handout that we shared with you. So when you look at this, it's broken down into the first set of columns is the jump going from grade 2 to grade 3. The second set is 3 to 4. The third set is grades 4 to 5. And then the last is grades 5 to 6. And it shows that the blue is to go second to third grade, for example, from 217 to 218 was 12 points growth for those kiddos. And then the orange is 18 to 19. And if you look at the second to third grade, there were 13 points growth. And 19 to 20, it's hard to see, sorry, is the gray. And for second to third grade, you'll see 15 points of growth. And then the 20 to 21, it was 9 points of growth. So you can follow that over for each of the grade, I'm gonna call them grade jumps. So second to third grade, third to fourth, fourth to fifth, and fifth to sixth. And like we talked about last night, is there is some ups and downs in there, but there's growth, which is a beautiful thing.
Kristen, can I just jump in here a little bit? Because I wanted to say that sometimes people look at this 5 to 6 and say, oh, is that not a lot of growth? But I wanted to sort of put this in perspective a little bit, is that we are reaching, this is the growth that our GVS kids from 5 to 6 experience. We're reaching almost a point of kind of diminishing returns, because if you, I'm just going to quickly pop back to where Kristen had put up the mean. So our mean for grade 6 is 226. And just to put this into perspective, grade 12 math mean is 235. So, you know, when we're talking about these big jumps that the kids have in the elementary levels, that makes a lot of sense. But then it's perfectly normal to see, especially with, to be honest, how high our kids are performing at that point. You know, they're only 9 points away from what the mean would be for grade 12. So it's perfectly normal to see the growth start to appear smaller, but also certainly not an indication of anything wrong.
That was a good explanation. Thank you, Sydney. And you'll find, as we look forward, and something that I've talked about often in my teaching career, is a very similar trend happens in reading as well as you go through Grantham Village School from kindergarten to those intermediate grades. So some of the math considerations that we had, our main takeaways that were that all our grades are above the national norms in mathematics, which is super exciting. And math showed a steady growth throughout COVID, contrary to national data trends. Things that we need to consider in research, and we have great data, and Grantham Village School is doing a great job, but you know, we can always look ahead and what can we do better. Everyday math has a heavy emphasis on language. So as I mentioned last night, will our early literacy intervention affect students' abilities to access the math curriculum more successfully? And as I mentioned last night, we're putting an emphasis on early literacy in our 21-22 school year. And then we'll be doing a comprehensive curriculum review of mathematics in the 22-23 school year. So as I said, things we're putting in place is the MTSS, the multi-tiered support system with a focus on early reading intervention, which may have a positive effect on our everyday math. And then our reading interventionist is going to be switching to a reading math interventionist. So we'll have some math intervention for our kids, which is exciting. So then moving forward to reading, We can go forward to that next slide. This is the same slide you saw last night, and comparing the 2021 winter Grantham Village School grade level averages to the NWA mean. In reading, every grade level, the average mean was above the NWA mean, which we put a big emphasis in past years on reading. So it's nice to see that. When we look at this, it's the reading growth slide. And again, from January of last year to January of this year, with that yellow being the fall, and there is a dip for most of them that you'll see that, again, we're not sure if that's associated with COVID and the changing of the models, or whether that's a normal fall dip, but it is exciting to see the growth from January of 20 to January of 21. And then the next slide, following that similar pattern that we were just talking about in the math, you can see again, as Sydney was sharing, that you don't see as huge a growth in 5 to 6, but that's also expected, just like in math, that I as a first grade teacher, I used to always say they can't keep progressing at this level, or they'd, I don't know, be off the charts. We wouldn't have charts that go high enough. So the gap does close in terms of the growth that they can make, but it's still very exciting to see that growth. So then we looked at, what does this all mean in terms of reading considerations? So a dip in the fall testing, there was a dip in the fall testing, but it was accompanied by recovery at every single grade level. And again, like I said, we don't know what the cause of that dip was, because we don't normally do that fall testing. As I mentioned, we are doing a 21-22 comprehensive curriculum review of early literacy, and that is one of our main focuses for our new multi-tiered support system model. And things we're putting in place is MTSS, and with that, matching the intervention to the student versus the student to the intervention. And then early intervention and utilizing all available resources, materials, as well as people. So it'll be exciting to see what these considerations, what these changes that we're going to make, how they affect our growth at Grantham Village School. So I think was that the last slide, Sydney?
That's the last slide. I was just going to leave it up in case the board wanted to go back and look at anything in particular.
So then Sydney and I can answer questions if you have questions.
I just had a question, probably Kristen, either place. The fall testing, because I'm not there when this happens, is there usually a preparation period in the spring to get the kids ready? Like, did this come on suddenly with less preparation?
No, so, well, we usually don't do fall testing. So, but this year we did it in October, and we don't do anything to, we don't do test prep or anything like that. It's just, this is the week we do NIWA, and they show what they know, versus test prep to do better on the test.
And at that time, the instructional model, was that the hybrid, or were we still, yeah, that was.
Yep, it was hybrid. We didn't return to 4 days until the first week of November.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question too, Kristen. So the fall testing, is that switching to fall, or was that off because of the COVID schedule the prior spring?
We did that, and Sydney, you might have a better answer, because this was decided before I joined the ranks, but my understanding is we did that because of the spring remote, just to kind of see where we were at, so that we could kind of gauge the waters and how we did as the year progressed, closing gaps.
Yeah, our teachers are very accustomed to looking at NIWA data and actually having it really drive their instruction, and seeing, you know, if any individual students are experiencing any significant gaps. So it was a good diagnostic tool for us this fall, to make sure that we knew where everybody was at that point.
And do you intend to do it next fall at this point, or?
We haven't really talked about that yet.
Thank you.
it would be interesting though, wouldn't it, to be able to see if it has similar results.
Right, because it could be a usual summer thing,
Mhm.
or, it could be something happen with remote. And the other thing I wanted to say is some of the scores, when you look at the early grades, we've traditionally attributed some of that to the fact that it's the first time that the little kids are taking the test, so some of it is getting used to the test. At the same time, I think Kristen has an excellent point where we need to look at what's happening with early literacy and see if there's a difference after we start to really make some changes there in our intervention model, and especially since our math program is pretty language heavy. So I think that'll be another really interesting thing for us to report out on to you next year.
Looking at this data reminded me that I wanted to ask about planning for a summer program to help out any kids who may be a little bit behind. And does the school have the resources it needs to put that together?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's very timely because I've just started digging into that and doing research on best practices in extended school year programs, and reaching out to some staff, and I will be reaching out to all staff about having a think tank about how do we want to set up summer school this year, with fingers crossed that kiddos can come in person and do summer school that way. And it's my understanding from talking to Sydney and Karen Lessard that the funds are there for summer school this summer.
Yeah, as far as resources, I think that we don't have any concerns, and we can cast a very wide net like we did last summer to see how many kids we can get to participate.
Yeah, good.
And I think last summer was a great program, and I liked the casting the wide net, but it'll be so much better if we can be in person.
Other questions or comments from the board on this?
I think what I want to do before we go any further is just really take a minute to embrace how wonderful this is when so many places are talking about learning loss. And thanks to our educators, thanks to our parents and guardians who made sure that the kids were still doing their work and had a good place to work at home, for everybody who kept up with all of that through the summer, and for our whole community who kept everybody healthy enough to keep us going. So I think it's something that we should all be incredibly proud of.
And I will say it's not surprising at all for how we approach things, but I know when Sydney and I first talked about these results, one of the first things she said to me was, we know there's some areas that we need to address, and we know that there's some individual students who need our attention, and we know that there's some areas of concern that we have our eyes on. And also let's look at the overall of success of where we are. So I appreciate you both and the whole staff approaching both sides of this, that these have shown us some areas that need some work and attention. And it seems like we already have some of those strategies lined up for next year for you to be able to start to implement. So that's a really good feeling. So we can sort of hold both of those truths at the same time, that there's some really positives shown in this, and as well as some clear indicators of areas that will need some attention. Okay, anything else for the discussion? Okay, so we'll move to our next agenda item, which is a discussion and possible action on the instructional model. And I know Sydney has some information to share with us. Before we go to that, I just want to frame, I got the sense that it might be helpful for the board to have some framing of what is the scope of the possible action for tonight. And I think having that framework put out before we start the discussion and hear from Sydney will be helpful. So there are 3 potential options as I see it for tonight, and there's certainly more options that other folks may bring to the table, but there are 3 potential options for us tonight. We could have a discussion with no action taken at this time. So we could just review the instructional model, look at where we are, look at some of the information that's come out since we last met, and decide to take no action at this time. We could have a motion to move to a sort of quote unquote more in-person instructional model, and we would need to define what that would be. So would that be a 4.5 day, a 5-day model? So we could have a motion to move to, like I said, a more in-person instructional model. And there are some considerations if that's the direction that anyone is thinking they would like to go tonight. And then we could, the third option would be that we could have a motion to remain in the current model for the remainder of the year. And so that would be notwithstanding any major changes or requirements or things, adjustments. That's something that could always change in the future. But the third option would be that there is the possibility for the board to vote to remain in the current model for the remainder of the year. So those are the three potential options as far as I see it in terms of either just discussion or actions we could take tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sydney to present what she has for us.
Thanks. I am just going to quickly take you through. There's been a lot of talk about the new CDC guidance. So I'm just going to very quickly take you through the CDC guidance, show you where we currently fall in Grantham on that CDC scale and matrix. And then I'll compare it to the New Hampshire updated guidance that was updated in January with the governor's orders. And then just talk to you briefly about, when we do move to a 5-day model, the considerations that everybody would need to have in mind. So the updated CDC guidance for K through 12 schools, which just came out February 21st. That's behind my Zoom thing. Yes, so it's the 21st. They emphasize 5 layers of mitigation components. And these are things we're all familiar with. So the consistent implementation of layered mitigation strategies, and I will explain that a little bit more on the next slide. Response to the indicators of community transmission by New Hampshire and CDC standards. This is done by county, so it's always by county transmission levels. Phased mitigation and learning modes, surveillance testing, and then vaccination. So these are the 5 key components that the CDC is talking about with schools. So regardless, when they're talking about those mitigation, the layered mitigation, regardless of the level of community transmission, all schools should have universal and correct use of masks, which is a priority item, and we have that. Physical distancing, which is a priority item, and we have that, and that's defined as, they are still defining it as at least 6 feet plus cohorting and potting. Hand washing and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities, and contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine. And I apologize for the fuzziness of this next image, but I could not get a cleaner copy no matter how I tried. But I'm sure many of you have already seen this Swiss cheese model of the mitigation in schools. So if this is the horrible COVID virus that we've been talking about, cloth masks will start to prevent it. It can only get through these holes. 6-foot distancing is going to show up here. And then as you move along, you've got reduced occupancy and ventilation. We have excellent ventilation in the school. With the distancing and the occupancy, cohorting is in those layers as well. Hand washing is there, and then cleaning and disinfecting. And then hopefully by the time you get to this layer, we have some safe teachers and students. So I think that the methods that we've put in place in GVS have proven to be pretty effective so far, given our track record. So when we talk about masks, distancing, and cohorting, they are still currently recommending 6 feet. And I know that that's a big debate. So the board may want to talk about the differences between 3 and 6 feet. And then cohorting, as we currently have it, is an example of a 2-week rotation, is that K through 12, for example, would have PE, and all of the teachers and paraeducators are in that cohort. They stay in there. The same thing for 3-4, art library is with grades 3-4 for that week, and all of the teachers and paras are there, and music, etc. for 5-6. The design here is that if we have a case and the perfect example was really grade 1 case, is that they were in a PE rotation and they were in the cafeteria, which meant that we didn't even have to do anything with K through 2. So grade 1 was able to be quarantined for those 2 days with just PE. when we lose cohorting, which will definitely happen when we move to 5 days, PE would be with all of the grade levels. So you can see when you have that, and we would also have to move paraeducators around. We just don't have the staff to keep the cohorts that isolated. So when we do move to 5 days, we have to recognize that it's not that we can't do it again, it's just that it's the bigger risk that if we have a case, it means that more people would have to quarantine. And as we all know, if we have more staff out, that affects our ability to stay open. So where we are is in terms of the response to the community transmission. So the two main indicators from the CDC are the total number of new cases per 100,000 over the past 7 days by county. So this is as of yesterday. We had 78.8, which is classified as substantial transmission. And then the test positivity rate as of yesterday was 9.7, which is also considered substantial. So if one was substantial and another one was minimal or low or something, you're supposed to go by the higher one of these two. So if you look at the new CDC matrix, this is about where we would be right now if we were in substantial transmission. We would be looking at elementary schools being a hybrid model, physical distancing of 6 feet or more required. So we are actually in a mode that is more in person than what the CDC model would suggest. And I have to tell you that I feel comfortable with that, especially because of the lower numbers in Grantham and because of our strategies and how we've been doing so far, our track record. So even though this is telling us that we should probably be in hybrid, I personally feel very comfortable with what we're doing right now. If we look
Sydney,
at, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in and mention for folks that may be wondering, what Sydney just mentioned is why one of the options that I didn't mention before when I mentioned the 3 was a motion to move to a more restrictive model, because I think in conversation, we both felt that what we were doing here in Grantham was supportive of maintaining our current model, of not needing to go to a more restrictive or less in-person model. So just if folks were wondering why that wasn't presented as one of the possible options for tonight, we certainly could if folks felt we needed to entertain a motion to change to a different model that was more restrictive, we could do that, but that's why I didn't initially present that as one of the choices, just exactly for what Sydney mentioned.
If we apply the same, if we apply the New Hampshire standards from New Hampshire DHHS, where we would fall is we would either be in person or hybrid under this substantial category. And we are considered in person by the state right now. And the reason that I circled both of these is because, again, it goes back to our staffing. Our staffing levels are what would be considered strained still on a daily basis. So that's where we would sort of borderline this in person or hybrid mode. And I don't want to go too deep into this, but strategy 4 from the CDC has to do with diagnostic and surveillance testing. This is something that New Hampshire has not opted to do at this point. So we are well prepared for diagnostic testing in terms of the work that Karen Islander is doing and getting people for testing when they're symptomatic. But when you look at sort of the sewage testing or the on-site school testing that other places have, that's not something that's on the horizon right now from New Hampshire. Vaccination, teachers are still in group 2A. We've been hearing some very hopeful and positive news about vaccinations being moved up with the extra amounts of vaccine that are coming in. One thing that I continually find myself explaining to people is that there is no vaccine yet for children. So we do recognize that many of our precautions will be moving into the 21-22 school year. And we will take all of that into consideration, as we start to plan for that year. I'm not going to read this whole quote aloud, but the final line of the CDC guidance was to move teachers up to get schools open. So here's the main considerations for GVS. So we will be able to move to 5 days. The question really is when's going to be the right time to do it. So when we need to do this, when we're ready to lose cohorting. So I would assume that has to do with the number of cases in our community transmission. Some classrooms will not have a full 6 feet. However, I have to tell you that in the last 6 weeks, we have had another 8 students join GVS. We are packed to the gills as we are. So I think that it will, if we have any more students come in, which we may, we are probably, losing that 6 feet anyway, regardless of our 4 or 5 day model. And I know I can see the look on some of your faces. It is hard to believe that we had yet another 8 students join us. We should consider the additional time available outdoors for nicer weather. Hopefully the spring will get us outside more. We need to do the continual monitoring of our improved COVID conditions in our community. There is talk of a potential surge in mid to late April, but from what I'm hearing, this is sort of a race between, is it a variant surge or do we get vaccines out fast enough? So, if we all do what we need to do with precautions, and if the vaccines keep coming, then maybe we don't have to worry about that surge at all. We do have some potential of absences due to educator vaccinations. So as we reach that 2A group, we do know that we'll have people out probably from post-vaccination recovery days. We have not yet heard from the state how teachers are going to be vaccinated. So I can't tell you if it's going to be all the same day and we're all out the same day, or if they're going to be staggered. So I don't have any more facts about that for you yet. We do have to consider that we would probably have a loss of band or chorus for the remainder of the year. I want to emphasize that we might be able to do some lessons or maybe some small groups. And also that this is not because of the inability to sing or to play instruments, because schools have successfully found ways to do that. We honestly just don't have the space to do it. We don't have a space where we can hold a whole band or chorus. So we might be able to do, as I said, some small group lessons and find places for that to happen. One of the big things really is the effects on special services. And it goes into our next one, which is the ability to move all or at least most Wednesday activities into other times during the week. So I wanted to give you a picture of how important right now Wednesdays are. So these are the things that we would need to move into the week. What Kristen and I hear more than anything is, well, you've always done these things with a full week. Why can't you just do them again? We can to a certain extent, but our school days are not your average school days. Teachers don't have the time that they used to have. They're constantly being pulled to cover other duties. They have additional duties. They lose planning time because we're always trying to keep school open regardless of our staffing levels. So it isn't, there's just no way that we can compare it to the way that we used to do 5 days. So on Wednesdays right now, we do a lot of special needs services for individual students. We do small group additional help. We have all of our IEP and 504 meetings, or at least the majority of them. Common planning time is crucial, especially for grades 1, 2, and 3, because they are in not your average classroom environment. They're especially for those teachers of students in grades 2 and 3, where they're split across 3 classrooms. They very desperately need that common planning time to make those 3 classrooms work for all of those in-person days. Band and chorus is operating on Wednesdays. The preparation and delivery of lessons for quarantine students takes up a lot of time on that day. We have our whole class meetings to continue that whole class community. And it's also still the opportunity of doing a deep cleaning of the entire building with a whole school air exchange. So again, I really want to emphasize that I think everybody at GVS recognizes that 5 days is going to happen. And I think everybody's going to embrace that when it's the right time. The question is going to be when it's the right time. So I think Kristen and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. So I'll turn it over if any board members have questions for them, or if you'd like to open a discussion. And one of, yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Having listened to this presentation and reviewed the material in the packet, I just don't think now is the right time.
And I just want to clarify for everybody, Christine, you're probably referring to the Progress Monitoring Committee minutes.
all that and the CDC guidelines.
Okay.
What else was there here? And then the considerations you listed. Also, just reading through the comments from people on the staff. I mean, Chris Woodman saying she's never seen people so tired. Things like that.
And I was just going to mention too, and that folks probably have seen that the governor, Governor Sununu, has put out the requirement for schools to offer at least 2 days of in-person instruction. And so obviously we're meeting that requirement at the state level. So we don't have a concern and we're not looking to change anything that would impact that. And according to the state, I keep getting it wrong, Sydney, because it's too many words. According to the state, we are classified as mostly full-time in person. Is that the?
So on the state site, we have two classifications. One is mostly full-time in person, and on the map, it says full-time, fully in person. So.
I just want to chime in and saying, along with Christine, that I don't feel this is the right time either to go into 5 days. I'm looking at how much work it's taking just to get all these services and staff coverage with the model we have now. COVID isn't gone, the vaccines aren't here. I feel like this is the safest and the most respectful to the staff who's being asked to do so much for our kids.
Other discussion or questions that folks have at this point? Okay, I know one of the questions that has come up in progress monitoring and also just generally in conversation with parents is one of the reasons that I mentioned that sort of third option of a motion that we could, if we felt, and I'm not advocating for this at this point, I just want to put it out for discussion. We could have a motion to make the decision that we would like to remain in this current model for the remainder of the year. One of the questions that's come up from parents and from some staff has been sort of living this long in this sort of limbo of a month to month, wondering, is this the month when that decision is going to change? And that there is some peace of mind that comes from knowing that this, and some planning that's able to happen for folks, knowing that this is a decision that has more longevity to it. And so, like I said, I'm not at this point staking a claim on that, but I think it's worthwhile to bring the question and the conversation forward to the board.
Brittany, that was a good segue. I was just unmuting as you started talking, so but that's a good segue. I've often been an advocate for as much in person as we can be, and I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think I agree with the board that for now, I feel better about 4 days and the model, given the staff concerns and the fact that, even in Grafton County, meaning Hanover, there's a significant outbreak at Dartmouth right now, which makes Hanover sketchy. And so even from my own personal perspective, I feel like that's good for us to hold. However, it does give me some comfort as someone who is hoping and hoping and hoping for the sake of our kids to be 5 days. I hear you about the continuity. I sort of feel like we've all found some peace and some rhythm with what we're doing. But I think at the very least for our parents, it gives them an opportunity to like air this out every month. And we're only, technically we only have a few more months. And even if like next month we're all like happy and some miracle has occurred and we're like looking at 5 days, I just think that's like for me, that feels like a really healthy dialogue to have every month. It's sort of like airing it all out for everybody. That feels like a good compromise for me. So I wouldn't be in favor of like, we're just going to stay in it through June. I'd like to hold out the little candle of hope, with all the realistic disclaimers attached to it.
Leslie, I just want to say, I think that one of the nice things is that people are seeing that glimmer of hope more than ever now. Like some of the news that's come out in this past week is really good.
Just my personal vaccine story may give some perspective on this. I originally was scheduled for my first shot on April 1st. I was able to move it up to next Monday, March 8th. But then when I thought about it, you know, X weeks till you get the second one, then a couple weeks until that takes me into mid-April. You know, and I'm among the early vaccinated, relatively speaking. So it just is taking time, just taking time.
And I've been thinking about it quite a bit too. While you were talking and showing all those numbers, I looked, and you know, today there was 37 cases in Sullivan County. 12 of them were in Claremont. Claremont is driving that Sullivan County number, not our area, but that doesn't change. It's still here. It's still happening, and we have found a good pattern. And I think now we're in the mental toll of what it's taking on people, and reading the comments about the staff. I don't think now's the time to push them anymore. We need them at their best, and I think we've got a good balance now. But I agree with Leslie. I don't think we should take it off the table, because, like this weekend, Christine, they're going to vaccinate 10,000 people at the Motor Speedway. I mean, they're making strides. And the fact that they're talking about that next phase sooner than later, that's a good sign, because I know the teachers will be in it. So I don't think we should take it off the table. I think it should be revisited monthly.
I'll just add too that for me, the dialogue is so important, because I think all of us adults in this community feel a version of that exhaustion, and we have to put the staff first as our consideration, if for no other. I mean, the main reason is because we care about each other, but the second reason is because they are our frontline workers being with the children. But I think what I'll just clarify for the board, and I think you all know this, but I'm just going to say it out loud, which is the adults, the parents in the community feel that same version of daily desperation and exhaustion that the teachers feel. And for a long time, I think we were like in our camps. And what I feel now is that there's a little bit better feeling of like we're in partnership. That seeing the NWA stuff made me feel great. I felt like this is more than ever a partnership, because like you said, Sydney, the parents should take some credit for keeping the train moving.
Yep.
With all, like, believe me, I know how hard the teachers are working too, but I think we've found like a nice way to air this out. And this is kind of what Jody was saying too, that it feels like a healthy way to move forward, just being cognizant of everyone's worn out from it. We just want it to be normal, but we also have to be thoughtful, and there are like very real constraints on everybody's time. And you know, the parents, we're all just doing our best. That's what everyone's doing.
Do you think we should consider something like giving some level of certainty and say, we'll stay in this model at least till April vacation, and then we could look at it again? Would that help?
I mean, I don't mind talking about it monthly, but I defer to the group. I think I like the airing it out every month. I think it would give the parents, it would help keep the candle flickering, even if it's just to feel heard and seen through like progress monitoring and us having our dialogue, and Kristen and Sydney also sharing. It's important for parents to hear every month that there really are real psychological and logistical constraints that make it not possible to do it right now. But like, what if a month from now, I mean, some of the news just today, and Biden saying like, we might have enough vaccines available by the end of May, like that's a game changer. So, you know, so much can change in a couple weeks. So I think it's good at this point, given what's COVID is presenting us and the vaccines, to keep it going, to keep talking about it with the big, I hope that we can all acknowledge, I feel good about the 4-day model. I'd like 5, but 4 is, you know, there are some real benefits. So I don't know. I feel like I'm doing too much talking.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I just seeing it GVS and then seeing it with my high schooler. I mean, with this pandemic and all the things going on, it does give that day to do all the things that can't get done now because of the new structure of everything. And we're still in it. It's not changing. So I think the 4-day model is appropriate right now. But I agree with Leslie on that point, that just talking about it monthly, and I'm not sure we should set a date, because if you were to decide in April, hey, it's been great, everybody got vaccinated, then you may want a few weeks to change things. So that might bring it to May. So I'm wondering if just revisiting it monthly, and then from there making the decision, if you do choose to go back to 5 full days this school year, how long it would take to make that happen. Because I'm imagining it would take weeks again.
Yeah, and maybe what we do, it's a little too soon now because it's only March, but perhaps we either mentally or actually like make a note to start thinking in April and May to ask ourselves, what are the lines in the sand? How are we going to make decisions for the fall? You know, in one of your slides, Sydney, it was sort of like, you know, we probably won't have a vaccine for children, and that's like a dialogue we need to have out loud with community input and things like that, because that jury is still really out in terms of what the kids are going to need on a health front if we're at herd immunity for the adults. So that's another consideration. Is I think Kristen too, probably, I know you already are thinking of it, you and Sydney both, but like how much advanced planning, when should we, in the spring and some, you know, in the spring, when should we talk about what does 5 days look like given current numbers, current concerns, knowing that things will change? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns for parents, is just like Dartmouth basically said, most people are going to, at least for now, like try to be back to work in September. And so, you know, I think that's not going to be unusual. So we can backwards plan from things like that.
I think I heard there's now some testing of vaccines for children.
Yeah, there's trials right now. There are 4 trials that are happening. One thing that's just a tad on the unfortunate side for GVS is that all of the trials are for kids 12 and up. But the idea behind the 12 and up and it going to that next level is that if we get the herd immunity, and I think it was Dr. Tansky on our committee was talking about, you build the cocoon. If you can build the cocoon, and if you don't have any of the adults having it, and then you start going into that next 12 group, then the little ones wouldn't have it. One of the concerns that I think everybody started talking about at our last meeting that will be coming up soon is that we need to revise our quarantine policies a little bit, because soon we are going to have 2 parents who are vaccinated who start traveling with kids who are unvaccinated, and they will need to still quarantine when they're back in school. And we just have to make sure that that's pretty clear. So like, we're going to have a different set of parameters to start defining as the adults are vaccinated, but kids aren't.
And has the CDC released anything on that? I know that there's been talk about the states and not needing to quarantine if you've gotten both vaccines, but what about for children? Have they released information on that?
Right now, the quarantine requirements for kids is the same. So if the kids travel, they would have to quarantine from school or do the test out, or, you know, the 10 days or, you know, all of those other kind of things. But what's happening with the vaccines for adults is that I believe it's 14 days after your second shot, you are free to travel.
Okay, I appreciate the conversation, and I definitely agree with a lot of the points that you all brought up. And Leslie, I appreciated you talking as much as you did tonight. You said a lot of stuff that I have been thinking and really agree with. And I think we have a natural sort of rhythm because we have the monthly board meeting. We have a sort of natural rhythm to that check-in point. And now the Progress Monitoring Committee does have a sort of schedule that we are on, so that we will make sure that we have a progress monitoring meeting before we're meeting as a board, which helps as well, because we've been able to get some input from some other folks during those meetings. And so I am certainly comfortable just having tonight remain in that sort of discussion mode. And I think it's really helpful to sort of touch base on what we're doing and how that fits into the structures that we've seen both from the CDC and from the state. So I appreciate that. And I agree. I mean, I think we are all, later on in the meeting, I was gonna thank all of you, because in 11 days, 12 days, we're coming up on our 1 year of we've been doing this for a year. So I think it was right around the 14th or so that we had our emergency meeting. And so, you know, this is really tiring, really intense work to be doing for a year, for our teachers, for our parents, for our kids, for everybody. So I appreciate the conversation. And so it sounds like having a discussion of the instructional model in April will be our next step. And letting this sit as a discussion with no action at this time for this meeting.
And I know that we're moving on from this, but one of the things I do want to emphasize, especially since we just did our NWA scores, and I think that we've all had to really walk that fine line and find some balance in focusing on learning. And once again, I think that just the community and the things that we've been able to do with that Wednesday have really helped learning. And again, I'm not saying that that doesn't mean we change to 5-day, because I know that we will. But I did want to say that that has really helped us to still provide kids with everything that they need.
Yeah, I saw an interesting, I'm sure lots of folks have framed it this way for themselves, but it sort of changed my framework. I saw an interesting quote that said, this is the year that will force us to stop asking, is so-and-so ready for second grade, and start asking, is second grade ready for so-and-so? This will be the year that it forces us to all sort of change that language, and really start thinking more intently about, is the grade ready for the kid that's coming? So thank you for the conversation about it. It sort of leads us into our other monthly thing we check in on now, is that policy JH. So the addendum to the attendance and absentee truism policy. Are there any either updates from Sydney or from Kristen on use of the policy, or folks that are engaging it, or questions from the board?
Kristen, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm not sure how many people have requested its use, or if people have started asking about April vacation yet.
I haven't heard any requests or questions about April vacation yet, but very often Mr. Beachy's pretty amazing. They'll go to him directly and I won't even know what's going on. So he may have answered questions that I don't know of. We have 2 people using it right now. One went on vacation after vacation, and then we'll have to quarantine. And the other used it, but has an extended vacation, so it's beyond JH, but they did use their JH part for part of their time. But other than that, there's been no change since the last time we met and talked about it.
Kristen, I was going to ask, since we're a few months out of having this policy and we've had a few, folks who have used it, have you seen any concern, or have you heard any concern from teachers sort of related to students who have fallen under this policy in terms of keeping up with work, or coming in and feeling like they're sort of not able to sync back up with their class? Some of the concerns that we thought might happen from one of one of our concerns of having this policy.
So it's interesting because we've always had I don't even know what it was called, but a vacation policy for people to go on vacation outside of our regular vacations. And it feels more like that, in terms of teachers are doing what they would have done had it just been a vacation week in a normal year. So I think it feels comfortable for everyone. It's the extended ones that are difficult, because when it's over a week, it's really hard to catch a kid up on all the work that they've missed. A week is hard enough, but then over a week, it's really hard to do that catch up.
Any other questions or discussion from the board for this? Seems like we're in a similar place on this one to last month, just sort of letting it sit now that it has a more limited time frame.
Yeah, and I'll just put out, I like revisiting it. It's good to kind of get an update in terms of who's using, the numbers and kids and things like that. It's great to hear your perspective, Kristen. I definitely think that as we move into planning for next year, and let's say that we're not in as good a position as we hope, I definitely would like to talk about keep this policy as part of that conversation in terms of like our boundaries and policies for whatever the fall looks like.
Sounds good. Okay, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the action on the special education teacher job description. Any questions or comments on that job description? Okay, so if there aren't any, we would need a motion to approve the special education teacher job description.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Leslie, so we'll need a second.
Second.
A second from Christine. So we'll do a roll call vote. If you're in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Jody,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
and Brittany, aye. So the motion passes. So we'll move on to discussion. And this was in the board packet, the response from the governor to the letter that we sent on behalf of the board relating to vaccinating teachers.
Just a generic response, but you know, since it's board correspondence, it's yours
Yep.
to review.
All right, any discussion of that item?
Does the governor do regular updates on COVID issues? I think he does.
Every Thursday at 3.
Thursday.
Mhm. So the next piece of news, like I said earlier, we'll be waiting for from him is how the 2A teacher group will happen. You know, some of the logistics and strategies that they have.
When he talked about that last week, I know he alluded to leaving it up to the districts. Do we know if that is still on the table so that they don't have to close schools while teachers are being vaccinated?
No, they've toyed around with multiple ideas where it could be up to the district, it could be a school site-based clinic, it could be one of the regional clinics. You know, schools could stagger it out if they wanted to, but we don't have any concrete information yet.
I've talked to a couple people who have gotten their vaccines up at the old J.C. Penney's in West Lebanon.
Mhm.
And they've said it's not crowded at all. There are people there who are administering shots who don't have clients to give the shot to. So it just seems that the word isn't getting out about people being able to schedule appointments.
Mm.
Ben had called 211 and we were advised, try and see if you can get an earlier date, and it
Mhm.
worked.
And Claremont is actually going to be moving into an indoor clinic too, so that they can do mass vaccines.
That's great.
Mhm. Okay, then our next agenda item is to review the consent agenda. Are there any questions or changes to the consent agenda? It's a long one tonight.
We have a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, I just noticed that in I think it was more than one version of minutes, Jody is referred to as VC Poljasic.
I think that's vice chair. I think
didn't
that's
get
what
it.
that is, right?
Okay.
Okay. Unless you have an alias, Jody, that you're going for before you leave the board. No, okay.
Okay, so unless there's any other changes or questions for the consent agenda, we'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Moved.
We have a motion from Leslie, so we'll need a second.
Second.
I have a second from Christine. So we'll roll call. If you're in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. And if you're opposed, say nay. Jody,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
Denise.
I have a question. Since I was out on February 2nd, do I have to abstain from this?
From that one, you should abstain.
So which one, which one am I voting on how we're abstaining from?
You can actually just cite that. You could just say aye with an abstention for the meeting on February 2nd.
Aye with an abstention for Any notes from the February 2nd meetings?
And Brittany, aye. All right. So we do have a non-public session tonight. So the way that this will work is the board will go into a different Zoom meeting for the non-public session, but we will return to the public session in order to close out the meeting. We don't have any other business that we're going to transact back in the public session. When we come back, it'll just be the adjournment to leave the meeting. So if folks would like to join us back here to see our faces adjourn for the night, you're welcome to. But otherwise, we thank you for coming tonight. And just a quick reminder, we do have voting on March 9th. So Tuesday, a week from today, everyone should plan to go and vote at the town hall. And you'll be voting for school and town officers, so school board and other school district officers, as well as town officers. And you'll be voting for the school budget, the playground bond, and the school budget. And that all can take place at the town hall. And the town meeting has been moved to May. So just for clarity on that. Our next board meeting will be April 6th, which is when we will welcome at least one new board member. We shall see. And it'll be our reorganization meeting, and we will have revisiting our instructional model and all of those things we're doing on a monthly basis. So thanks to folks who joined us tonight. We really appreciate it. We'll see you on Tuesday for voting, and then back again in April. And Sydney, about how long do you think we'll need for our non-public?
We'll be back by 8, I would say.
Okay. So we'll plan to, we will come back in to the public session at 8 o'clock to adjourn. And so as we head into our non-public, thanks for the reminder, Brenda, we do need a motion to enter non-public. And what are we entering non-public under, Sydney?
It is 91A. And then let me get the exact. Too fast for me.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. 91A3 2A.
Okay, so we need a motion to enter non-public under 91A 32A.
So moved. Oh,
I have a motion from Leslie, and I'll need a second.
Second,
I have a second from Denise. And we'll roll call. If you're in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Jody?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
Christine?
aye.
Denise?
aye.
And Brittany, aye. So we were going into the non-public, and for the board, you can use the non-public Zoom link that Sydney sent out that we would have used last night. So it would have come in a couple of days ago. So you can go ahead and use that link to get into the non-public session. And then we'll come back in here at 8 o'clock.
Great. See you in a minute.